Yo, this is the iPhone 15 Pro, and I've been using it for close to a month at this point. The first thing I want to address is the overheating issues. This is by far the biggest controversy I've seen online about this phone. That first day I was setting up and getting all my data transferred over, the phone did get really hot. I had mentioned that in my impressions video, and that continued to happen throughout the first few days of use. I would take it off the charger and it would be hot, or just randomly throughout the day, touching it, it was real toasty. It's been over probably 2 weeks since that's happened, so I don't think that's something you need to worry about. Now, the design. I did go with the natural titanium finish, and I still think this is the best looking model by far. It's essentially this year's version of silver. Online, I had initially thought I had a subtle hint to it, but in person, it's just pure gray. I love it though, and think it looks gorgeous. Now that I'm to the point with this titanium build that I'm used to it, I really like it. I personally think it looks nicer than the stainless steel models. The industrial look it has is just my kind of design taste. Now, the one downside is the phone does feel very slippery. The edges, and most especially the corners, have a very soft feel, so I find that a lot of time I'm holding the phone with 2 hands because I don't want to drop it. It doesn't feel fragile, but I've still felt the need to baby it. Now, I'm starting to feel like the standard Pro model might actually be too small for my hands, so next year I do plan on trying out the Pro Max alongside this one to see which I prefer. As much as I love this caseless look, I am going to throw a leather one on here. I just haven't taken the time to research it because Apple got rid of theirs, so if you guys do know of any good ones, let me know. The other thing about this titanium build is it does actually feel a lot lighter. That's because it is roughly around 20 grams compared to the 13 and 14, which isn't a massive improvement, but I have noticed it in day-to-day use. Because I did come from the 13 Pro, the slim bezels and dynamic island are actually what I've been noticing the most. I think how they use the cutout is pretty cool, but in direct sunlight it does look stupid. The camera is another reason I wish I could have checked out the Pro Max. With it, the 5x lens was introduced, but on the base Pro model, there doesn't seem to be any improvements. It's the same exact sensors with the same apertures and megapixel counts. The few changes that were made on both are all within the software. The biggest in my opinion is with the ProRes log format. This allows you to take incredibly high quality videos on the iPhone and have a ton of flexibility in post-production. Colors are significantly more vibrant, and the footage itself just looks beautiful. It won't be ready to watch straight out of the camera. You're gonna have to take it into some other software like DaVinci Resolve to make it look right. My Sony camera doesn't even shoot in log, so it took me a good 10 to 15 minutes until I had it looking how I wanted. Also, note that it does take up a ton of storage. A minute of 4K 30 video in log is 5.5 gigabytes. So depending on how much storage you have, that might only be enough for a few minutes of video. Now that we have USB-C, you can take an external SSD or SD card and record straight to that. The other change is that you can set the phone's camera to shoot in 3 different focal lengths: 24, 28, and 35 millimeters. While these aren't the actual focal lengths, it's all done digitally, this can be a quick way to get a specific framing for your shot. Now, full honesty, I don't really take advantage of the iPhone's camera, so I cannot do it enough justice. Proper mirrorless cameras are always gonna have their place, at least for now, but knowing you have such a good camera in your pocket is fantastic. So in the last month, battery life, probably as expected, has been good. I've had no issues with it lasting my entire day. By the time I go to bed, it's sitting somewhere around 10 to 20%. Sometimes though even higher. That is of course going to depend on how much you use your phone, but for me, I have a few hours of on-screen time, and then the majority of the day is just Spotify or audiobooks in the background. Charging up with USB-C has been so convenient because oftentimes I'll forget to charge overnight, but I can just use the cable that I have in my bag and plug that into my MacBook. The action button is a useful tool, but I honestly haven't been using it as much as I thought I would. I've had it set to a dedicated tweet button, which really just means I'm going into Control Center a lot more when I need to silence my phone. While in the process of making this video though, I've actually switched it over to making a new note. I constantly have ideas throughout the day, but if I don't write them down immediately, I forget them. So having this is just so convenient. Both of these actions can be achieved by creating a shortcut in the Shortcuts app and then selecting it in the action button settings. I've already hinted towards it throughout the video, but USB-C really is that main feature, if I can even call it that makes this phone somewhat worth the upgrade. First world problems for sure, but my tech carry is now significantly simplified, only having to carry a single cable. One funny thing that you can now do is connect the phone up to an external monitor. You haven't been able to do this before, but now it's just easier than ever. With the A17 Pro chip, Apple's been hyping it up for its gaming capabilities, and while I don't consider myself a mobile gamer by any means, it is kind of cool that you can use it as sort of your own gaming console. Using my Razer Thunderbolt 4 dock, I can connect it up to my ultra-wide monitor and then get a DualSense and connect it. Given the iPhone's resolution, it fills up the ultra-wide screen pretty nicely. I'm still waiting for Mirage to drop on here. That'll be a lot of fun to test out, so I'm hoping that for my 6-month review, that'll be here. The iPhone 15 Pro brings a nice set of quality of life improvements. This is nowhere near a leap, very much an incremental upgrade, but I do think USB-C is going to be that main driver for a lot of people. The way I see it, iPhones are really meant to be upgraded every like 2 to 3 years. That seems to be the sweet spot. The trend I've noticed is that this is the time interval in which we either get a pretty significant design change or just enough of those small tiny changes stacked up that it makes for a meaningful upgrade. Some people are saying that this is a huge upgrade from the 13 Pro, but for the average user, I still don't actually think it's that big. I am hoping that with the 16 lineup, we'll see some larger changes. So that wraps it up. Let me know what you think of this phone down below. Really appreciate you for watching, but I'll see you next week. Take care.